So today we're going to talk about the 3 different school support structures. This is a qualitative analysis of response to intervention, individualized education plan teams, and 504 teams. The goal of this evaluation will be to identify what each support structure is, who is involved, how they are implemented in schools, and then differentiate how they are similar and distinct from one another. So the first one we're going to start with is RTI, which stands for Response to Intervention. This RTI is a 3-tiered system for any at-risk student. And in this context, at-risk stands for at risk of failure. The RTI is often used with the term MTSS, which stands for Multi-Tiered System of Support, and this refers to the 3 tiers of the RTI system. So Tier 1 is whole class. This is where their teacher uses research-based methods for instruction. This is techniques such as universal design for learning, but it can also be standardized testing or district or state level testing to assess students for at risk. Once students are identified as potentially being at risk, they can be moved up to Tier 2. This is intervention that is done in the small group level, generally 2 to 3 times a week, or as needed, and it's done by their general education teacher, although other support staff can be called in to assist with this as well. Tier 2 can only be implemented for a fixed period of time. Generally, it's about 8 weeks. And during that time, students will be evaluated as making progress and can be reincorporated into Tier 1. Or if adequate progress is not being made, the students will be transitioned to Tier 3. Tier 3 is the most specific and intensive level of intervention. And it may involve other resource staff, not necessarily just the gen ed teacher at this point. A special education teacher or other staff may be called to help intervene. And Tier 3 is for a fixed period of time as well, which is usually marked by 1 grading period, whether that be quarter, trimester, or semester. RTI, although it's for any student, whether they're classified as having a disability or not, is sometimes a way of gauging which students need to be formally evaluated as having a learning disability. This brings us to our 504, which is the blueprint for removing barriers. This is a formal plan designed to help kids succeed. It's important to note that the 504 plan is much more formal than RTI. It is granted to students who have a disability, and its name comes from Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which is protections for students with disabilities. A 504 plan is a little bit more vague than IEP, which we will get into, in that 504 plans can be provided to students with any disability, so long as it is deemed to interfere with their general education. A 504 plan provides accommodations. These can be things such as extra time for testing, changes to their learning environment, such as preferential seating. But it cannot change what is learned, which is what will be referred to as a modification. A 504 plan team generally includes the child's parents, their general education teacher, and principal or other administrator. There's no formal list of who can be on it, it's just what is deemed in the best interest of the student's success. The next thing we'll talk about is the IEP, or the Individualized Education Plan. This is developed for students with a disability to receive specialized instruction. Students with an IEP receive fair, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. Of the 3 support structures we talk about today, the IEP has the most specificity to it. So IEPs are part of the IDEA, often referred to as IDEA, where students with one of 13 disabilities listed received free instruction, special education instruction at no cost. The disability must interfere with their general education success. Their individualized education plan is updated annually by their IEP team, and this team includes a parent or legal guardian, their general education teacher, a special education teacher, a district representative who can help them with cost and implementation, someone to interpret the child's evaluation results. This can be a school psychologist, but it can also be another member of the IEP team. The child, if applicable, and other specialized personnel as needed, such as a speech-language pathologist, occupational therapist, or physical therapist. The IEP includes present level of performance. It gives the student measurable goals, specific accommodations or modifications, and specified services. So in general, an IEP must list what the student can do, give measurable goals, and ways for these goals to be achieved. This can be changing not only their environment and how things are presented to them in the form of accommodation, but also modifications where students have different goals for what they are expected to learn. And these services need to be in an environment that is the least restrictive. So this should be in the general education classroom, although in some instances they are best served in a special education classroom or a combination of both. The RTI against the 504 and the IEP is a very unique system. The RTI involves every student, and it's done in every general education classroom, or at least it should be. And every teacher has their own measures in place. It's less formal, and it provides students a way to move back down to the previous tier if they are making progress. Every 504 plan and IEP is part of the RTI system. Students with 504 plans or IEPs are generally in tier 2 or 3 of the RTI system. But the RTI system doesn't necessarily require annual meetings or specific team members. So that's how it greatly differs from the other two support services. The 504 and the IEP are often confused for one another in that they both only serve students with disabilities. However, the 504 plan includes only accommodations but cannot change what is expected to learn. It's still a way to implement the general education curriculum. Both the 504 plan and the IEP are updated annually. And although 504 plans are generally written by schools for students with a disability, there are no set team members for how this will be implemented. It's up to the school site and the student's case to decide how this is implemented. An IEP must contain certain members, and IEP format is the same nationwide in that it has to contain the same criteria. The final point of distinction to make is that IEPs are able to provide services that the 504 plan cannot, such as specialized instruction, whereas 504 plans are generally ways to accommodate within the general education classroom. IEPs are a little bit more in-depth than that. So those are our 3 support structures and how they are similar and different from one another. Thank you so much for watching.